I have a somewhat radical thought. I was just reading something that I wrote 5 years ago, and it sparked this thought in me around the enemy's ability to read our thoughts. And I say it's a radical thought because I know a lot of Christians who say the devil can't hear your thoughts. The devil can hear what you speak out, and that's definitely true, and what you speak out is powerful. But I tend to believe that he can hear my thoughts too. And let me tell you why. First, when I was very young, my mom had a near-death experience. She was on the operating table having her brain operated on, and she died. And she went to heaven. She met Jesus. She had a conversation with Jesus. And one thing that she always said and remembered was that that conversation did not happen through spoken words. That conversation happened thought to thought. And so when I think about that, I think, well, if Jesus spoke to my mom up in heaven, thought to thought, probably that's how we'll communicate when we go to heaven. Well, who was up in heaven? Who is up in heaven? Well, angels are up in heaven, and Satan and his minions were angels up in heaven. And they didn't seem to lose their abilities, their ways of doing things, just because they were kicked out of heaven. So when I think about that, and I think, how often do we succumb to the thoughts in our head? And then we realize they're not our thoughts. So let me paint a picture for you here, because I know that I have had these thoughts and stopped them in their tracks and then rebuked the devil, and the thoughts went away. But the thoughts all were happening in here. None of it was spoken. I don't speak to myself in this way out loud. And that's why in certain instances I've realized that it was the enemy speaking to me. Well, if he can speak to me in my thoughts, and then I respond in my thoughts, and he keeps speaking in my thoughts, doesn't that mean that he can speak to me and communicate with me thought to thought? That when those thoughts are planted in my head, it's because he spoke them to me in some way? Or when I respond and I start that conversation, and it can become a back and forth conversation in your head, just like when you're speaking with the Holy Spirit. That back and forth conversation, though, can be with the devil. So if you randomly have some thoughts, maybe you're about to go into something new, you're starting something big, and thoughts like this come to mind. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to prophesy? Who do you think who said that you could actually be a worship leader? Or your sin is so big, it could never be forgiven. You should just give up now. Just quit trying. You'll never make it. You'll never be as good as them. You're pathetic. These are all things that come from the enemy. Those aren't words from God. God says you are capable, you are able. I made you, I knit you. I created you. You are more than worthy. So if I can hear those words from the Holy Spirit, those positive things, when I ask, Holy Spirit, what do I need to hear today? And I get that kind of encouragement, and it's in my head. And then I can get wrapped up in worry and things like that, and those other negative types of thoughts can flood into my head. And I know, like I said, I don't speak to myself that way. Well, it lends itself to me to say that the enemy really can hear our thoughts, that telepathy, so to speak, is a heavenly way of communication, thought to thought. And if he did it in heaven while he was an angel leading worship for God, what makes us think that he's not able to communicate in the same way here on earth. I'd really like to know your thoughts, because I hear that so often, that the devil can't hear your thoughts. So you can't rebuke him in your head, you have to speak it out. I disagree. I have rebuked him in my head, and I have rebuked him through speaking it out. And while speaking it out is definitely way more powerful, it worked when I spoke it out in my head as well. When I thought, no, you can't talk to me that way. No, that's not my thought. I rebuke you. Stand down. No. And it works. So if I can rebuke him in my head, he must be able to hear me through my thoughts.